Welcome to Journeys Through Sociology, a series of interviews with the Executive Committee of the International Sociological Association. I'm Lalebe Bahanyan, and our guest today is Dr. Chin-Chun Yi, who is joining us from Taiwan. Dr. Yi is a research fellow at the Institute of Sociology at Academia Sinica, Taiwan. She received her PhD in sociology from the University of Minnesota in the U.S. Dr. Yi has done extensive research on issues relating to family, youth, gender, and education. She spent many years developing the Taiwan Youth Project, where she led a team of researchers in examining the relationship between family, school, and community. In addition to her academic work, Dr. Yi has also served as a commissioner and honorary advisor for the Taiwan provincial government and established the Child Protection Program in Taiwan. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Yi.
Good morning, Lale.
It's wonderful to have you with us. And I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to get to hear a little bit about your journey through sociology, the path that led you to sociology, and some of the work that you've done over the course of your career. But perhaps maybe we could begin in the present, and you could just share a little bit with us about some aspect of your work that you're particularly excited about right now.
Okay, so let me talk briefly about my research. First of all, I'm a research fellow in Academia Sinica, which is a government-sponsored research institute, meaning that we are not required to teach. Although most of us do teach one course per year in a university like National Taiwan U or Tsinghua U. And I did that too from 1984 to 2006. But after that, I've been focusing on my recent studies and talking about my research interest. For the first part of my academic career, I've been studying comparative studies on the family system in different Chinese societies, such as Taiwan, China, and Hong Kong. And my focus has been on the conjugal power relationship. And after that, because of the massive demographic changes in this part of the region, meaning low fertility, I and my colleague have engaged in comparative studies in East Asia, especially like value of children or intergenerational support. And starting from year 1998, a group of us here in Institute of Sociology started to have a strong, genuine concern and interest on the next generation. So we invited scholars and colleagues from other universities to join us, and we decided to launch a longitudinal panel study on Taiwan youth. And we want to know what is the outcome or what is the diverse growth trajectory patterns of these group of youth under the massive clash between tradition and modernity. And we decided to focus on the most important social institutions that surrounded these youth, which is family, school, and the community. And we were able to follow them up to this year. And there are still more than 65% of our original sample stay with us. So we are very pleased, of what we have done.
So for our viewers who may not know what a longitudinal panel is, meaning so that you follow them every single year during a period of time through their youth.
Right.
Yes.
And especially there's one thing that I would like to just briefly mention. In Taiwan and as well in other parts, other countries in East Asia, usually we have 6 years of elementary school and then 3 years of junior high. In Taiwan, these 9 years are mandatory or compulsory education. And after that, you need to take a comprehensive entrance examination if you would like to go to the senior high school. And in the 3 senior high school, the tracking process starts. You can either choose to go to academic track or vocational track. And in either track, after 3 years, there will be another comprehensive entrance examination to determine if you are allowed to go to college. Again, academic track versus vocational track. And since educational achievement has been a shared common value, across different classes, So a typical adolescent growing up in this context, usually their major source of pressure are from the examination, which is very different from the rebellious youth in the West, because all your lifestyle you go to school during the day until like 5 in the afternoon. Then after 1 or 2 hours break, you go to the cram school again until 9 or 10. And during the weekend, of course, you're stuck up in your cram school all the time in order to prepare for the entrance examination.
The cram school is cramming for an exam. Okay.
Right. Yeah. It's just the major goal is to get a higher score in the entrance examination. And in our study, we were able to show that, in fact, this is not a remedial educational strategy. The best students still go to cram class, in order that they will not be falling behind of their peers. So it's like a second lifestyle, which seriously affect your psychological well-being, your relationship with your friends and your parents. So in other words, our genuine sociological concern is whether this structural arrangement, meaning the entrance examination or the pressure from it, will determine a typical adolescent's, psychological well-being. And for example, we use depressive symptom as an indicator, and we tap it every year. And in the West, from the literature, it's clear that usually the depressive symptom has gradually heightens until age 18 or so, and then they started to going down. And we call this a biological maturation model. But at least from Taiwan and in Korea or Japan, we noticed that the pattern is different. It's bimodal. Usually, the depressive symptom is the highest for the year or the months before the entrance examination. So for the last year of junior high, as well as the last year of senior high, you will see the peak.
So there's a direct correlation between the examinations and these psychological depression issues, and
yes, very significant.
So actually,
other words,
I'm sorry.
From the sociological stand, it is clear that this structural factor oversees the significant effect of a normal biological maturation model. But on the other hand, we are also interested to know whether the relational aspect makes a difference, because usually from the West, we were told that peer, has more important influence than parents at this, turbulent stage. But in our study, we were able to show family maintains its significant influence during junior high. But after that, it is true, the parents' influence gradually decrease, whether they agree or not. And that the importance of the peer influence started to grow. So I think adolescents, after all, are adolescents, and they do share some common traits.
Universally, yes. Well, and, I also, there's, many parts of the world have experienced massive changes in their educational systems in the past, few decades. As you study the relationship between, mental health and general well-being of youth and these kinds of institutional the structures of education and testing, do you see any changes in the educational system and any kind of correlating changes that you can see among patterns among youth?
Oh, yes, definitely. I think for thousands of years, we always give high respect to those people who study well. Let's put it this way. So a typical nerd in the West may feel inferior, but don't worry. If they are in the East Asia, they'll be highly praised and how focused this boy is. He only knows studying, But nowadays I notice, maybe because of the westernization or because of the slow change of values and attitudes, we started to realize that, and also the promotion from the government educational policy, we want to know that not every child is the same. Some child are good at mathematics, but other child are good at music or art. So we really encourage diverse growth, pattern, and the educational reform was based on this kind of logic. So the thing previously, one entrance examination determine your future growth, either this school or that school. So for the new educational system, they allow you to add up to your other strengths, such as your extracurricular activities or your voluntary work, in a nursing home or in other or in a handicapped organization.
So the value of the test has gone down a bit in general.
Hopefully, of course, value changes very slowly, but I think policy can shape the growth of the direction. So we look forward that in the next generation, as more and more, I must say, still from the affluent, families, many youngsters are now studying design, art, drama, and things like that, which are not conventional subjects in our society. And I'm really happy to see this kind of growth.
Yes. So, and it's fascinating to listen to speak about this, Dr. Yi, because it's so clear the way in which you bring a kind of sociological perspective to trying to understand these issues relating to youth and thinking about the institutional structures that shape things and the relations, let's say, with family or community. And so, I'd be interested to know what really led you to sociology and what really drew you to thinking about the world in that way.
All right. Let me bring out three possible reasons. The first one I would call the life course. When I graduated from National Taiwan University back in year 1972, there was no graduate program in Taiwan. So in order to pursue further studies, you have to go abroad. And in that time for Taiwan, abroad equates to US. So I applied to US. And it just at that time, my father, who's a very traditional, patriarchal, father, he decided in our family, all the sons are supposed to get their PhDs, but for the females, for daughters, you only need to get your MA. So I went to the States, to Wisconsin, and get my master's. And after that, I wrote home. I said, okay, like
and your
my
master's
sister.
was in sociology?
Yes.
Okay.
And my sister at that time already got her master's from Bowling Green in music. And then she got married afterwards as my parents, predict what she should do. So I remember it was a very important letter. I wrote home. I say, dear father, as the youngest of the family, may I, ask for your permission to deviate from the trajectory that you have planned for me, because I don't want to get a job and I don't want to get married. So if I have a scholarship, can I go on and study? And at that time, two of my brothers already got their PhDs, in double E and in pharmacy. So my mother said my father thought for a few days and wrote back in Chinese calligraphy at that time. Right? She said, I think so, because time has changed. That's what he said. I think he's persuading himself, not me. And so I was very lucky to get a scholarship and I go on to study. So I think life course, macro or micro, the situation at that time permits me to go on study. But the second factor is probably the most important. I think it's the social changes took place at that time. It was such a massive trend that nobody can ignore, because we, in Taiwan in the 70s, it really experienced a very rapid economic growth. And accompanied by the rapid economic growth is a deviation from the traditional value that we always think that's what things should be, but it's not something you should be, because people can change. And I think I was very lucky, because while we were observed the clash between tradition and modernity, or the debates between what ought to be in this kind of system versus the new ideas, there's many insights for sociologists. So at that time, I was in Minnesota, and I was thinking about, this is something I want to do. I'm really glad I'm in sociology. And then I think
in a way, it was the kind of time of massive social change and turmoil. a sociological perspective enabled you to kind of make sense of that fast-paced social change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also, the thing is that the third factor, I would say my existing environment at that time. Because I remember, because of the social changes, you will notice many elite nobles, they become the relatively less advantageous in terms of economic standing. Because previously we give high respect to like government officers or to people with, scholarship, etc. But now the new class have started. They are earning their money. They may not use the same language, but they have the power which financial resources allow them. So you can really see how society was changing back in the 70s. And for good or for bad, there's no judgment, because the society is changing and you want to capture a different aspect of life. So I think that kind of part is really something important. But why I have been staying as a sociologist all these years, I think I must really give my thanks to Academia Sinica. I was thinking about, we are so lucky, so privileged, that you can really focus on something that you wanted to study. And then you have the resources to do so. And this work environment is something that I really appreciate. And then another aspect, as a typical female of my age in Taiwan, I must thank my two families, my family of origin and my husband's family. They all always provided me support, and whatever I need in order to do a good research. They understand these few months will be difficult, so everybody will really accommodate.
Actually,
now, come to think of that.
Yeah, well, speaking of, you bring up the difficulties, right, and the forms of support that family has to provide to enable, sometimes for sociologists to be able to do their work. And I would be interested to hear more about some of the difficulties that you've faced as a sociologist as well, because so far we've talked a lot about, in a way, a lot of the potential and possibilities of sociology, how, being drawn to it as a way of making sense of rapid social changes, or, changes happening within a nation, changes, generational changes. But also, what about some of the frustrations, perhaps, that you felt, or the challenges that you've had as a sociologist?
I'm sure there are always frustrations, but maybe because of the aging effect, I can only think of the positive side that I need to thank for. But let's see how it goes, okay? I think the challenge that has always been imposed on me as a person of this background, of this cohort, of, I think has been the norm. Because the gender norm, for example, they do not expect female to get PhDs in my age, right? And I was actually the eighth sociological PhD coming back from the West to Taiwan. But I was also the only one who has been lived in a 3-generational household. And a paternal, of course, is not maternal. So I've been living by my husband's parents, and I have raised 2 children. And because of the normative effect, I've been expected to fulfill all my familial roles so that I can work on my working roles. Yes. In other words, I have to talk faster, sleep less, and work more efficiently, which is probably not a bad thing. Maybe I sacrifice the time that my colleague would like to spend in a tea house or in a wine house, which is the luxury that I can only do it when I go abroad for conference.
So and clearly there's a specificity to any particular society or community in terms of those challenges, but also as you describe that, it sounds very universal to me in the sense that there is this struggle that many women have, sociologists and in many other professions as well, of even if the norms may differ from society to society, still that struggle to be able to negotiate those various demands, that seems at least somewhat universal.
Yes. Yeah. And actually, I'm thankful for my husband, who's a mathematician. So I also work in Academia Sinica. So we have we understand each other's pressure from your research. So we give support and we really try to accommodate. But then my parents-in-law, who are also supportive, they are very pleased. Their daughter-in-law, who is a PhD and still work very hard at the house. But if you have parents-in-law living with you, their need and their demands is also is always the priority. Mm-hmm. There's no room for you to negotiate. Yeah. So if anything happens, you have to take care of that part first, and then children second, right? So for some reason, it may be universal too. As a female sociologist, married female sociologist especially, usually, your ranking order at home is the last. But I think that maybe because, as I said, because the existing environment of Academia Sinica, and because of the support that I got from the family, they do encourage me to carry on this job. So I think that I'm lucky in a way that I'm able to do that until now. I'm still living with my mother-in-law, who is now 100 years old and 1 month. but she's now getting very weak. Right. And then I think you asked me about other challenges. Ever since we started this Taiwan Youth Project, we realized in order to understand a typical growth trajectory of youth, if we only focus on the sociological perspective, maybe it's not complete. So for example, when adolescents enter into young adulthood and they encounter problems in finding jobs, they also have their premarital sex experiences and or their, deviant behavior, things like that. And so we have invited, psychologists, economists, and also experts from the public health to join us. And I think I must say I really enjoy the collaboration. Usually, any research topic, if we have to blindfold and write down your answers, it's going to be different. And then from the difference, we negotiate, we discuss, we debate seriously, and come up with some consensus, how to interpret this kind of finding. So for Taiwan Youth Project, we continue to do that. We still invite our colleagues from other disciplines to help us to present a better picture of how to explain the mechanism that significantly affect their development. So I think that's something that I think it's a challenge, but it's also
a possibility. Which is what I wanted to say, that I love the way that you speak about these challenges in both examples you gave, because the challenge you also see clearly as a real possibility. So, on the one sense, family and gender roles may provide certain constraints or frustrations, but at the same time, they provide certain forms of support that enable you to do the work that you want to do. Or that, while disciplinary boundaries may be a challenge and limiting, it presents the possibility of exploring interdisciplinary work. And are there any other challenges that you would think of?
I must say, you see, I probably am an incurable positivist. I was thinking about
why would you want to cure that?
Optimistic person, because, for example, panel study, we do surveys, and so it's a quantitative methods. But at the very beginning, we have 6 subjects, we call it research proposals, and one of them is the qualitative study, qualitative interview. So like we secure a 60 diet, meaning 1 parent and 1 youth sample. And we've been doing in-depth interview for the 3rd time. And the reason for that is because I think for quantitative survey, usually it gives you a skeleton, a major trend of what was happening. Maybe you think single parent is the most important issue, but actually when you put it into the wider samples, it constitutes 7%. It is important by itself, but percentage-wise, it's the minority that give us a sense. And then the qualitative study allows us to explore different mechanisms affecting their growth. So I was very pleased at that time that we have included this subject. And I have learned a great deal from my colleague who has been an expert in qualitative studies. For example, as we follow them, I realized there were samples from the lower class or from the less educated parents, but their youth enter into the best university or even into the national university, the graduate school. And what happened? What makes them to be successful? So we coined this concept of resilience into different aspects. And the first one, of course, we use the we call academic performance or academic success. And among the eight sample the diet that I interview, I realized that it's still very important that a parental expectation of children having success in education is a very important motivation. Just being free, say, oh, you're free to do whatever you want, usually does not become a very strong push for children to try hard. But if parents allocate their limited family resources, as I said, these are from the less, SES families, but their children are having a very good academic success, we notice that for parents who put a high expectation, it's usually really become very significant push factor for these youth to strive hard, because they know this really brings in the conventional terms, a family glory. But nowadays, probably it pleases your parents' heart. It also, makes yourself feel very good. So this kind of qualitative survey is very important. And now we are going to engage in this year. We are going to engage in the second phase. Is that I don't know if you're aware of or not, because of the demographic changes, the lower SES males have been having hard time finding suitable mates. So we have these foreign brides from less developed areas like Vietnam or Indonesia or Thailand or Malaysia or mainland China. And we call it foreign bride families. And their children are also included in our sample. We have noticed there are at least 34 of them who are now in their age 25. So I would like to know, because we always study from the parent side, whether foreign bride has been discriminated against, what kind of difficulty they encounter in the community or with the family. But how about their children? What is their experience when they grew up? And I think this is my next project that I'm going to do by qualitative interviews.
And I actually still have another question for you, but quickly, I would like to just kind of squeeze in there. Dr. Yi, what is it about, what is it that drew you to really have an interest in understanding youth? What is it about that subject that has really clearly motivated so much research and led you to think about everything from education, family relationships, but it seems like it's really that period of youth that really interests you in your work.
I always think that it's very important, as I tell my children or my students, when you do research, first of all, you really must have a passion. I guess passion is important for you to be in any other job, but especially in research, because it's a hard and lonely journey. To become tenacious is not only by determination. You must have a real, genuine passion of the subject. I think that's the most important thing. And then passion will drive you to have a genuine concern. I really care for these youth and how they grow, whether their background really affect their diverse growth. What can we do to make it less unequal? I don't think it's possible to attain, a utopia society of equality, but there must be some way from the policy, from the macro mechanism, that we can slow down this kind of negative track or make it more equal. So I think that genuine concern is also important. But I think another thing, especially for scholars from Taiwan or in a non-Western area, I think we must be sensitive to the indigenous patterns, which is deviate from the West. And by bringing out, as I said, for example, what I just told you about the effect of educational entrance examination, it really seriously affect their growth pattern. This is very indigenous, and it should be highlighted to if you have passion, have genuine concern, and you're sensitive to the indigenous pattern, I think it's possible to produce some sociological insights of what you are doing. And then you get your inner reward. And if you're lucky, then you can even tell the public what's going on. And moreover, if you're really trying to become an activist, you can, try to offer your suggestion to the government.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Yi, unfortunately, we're really short on time, but I would like to ask you one final question. You clearly have spent your career doing all kinds of sociological research, but, can you imagine having taken another path? And if you had, what might you have liked to have pursued?
Yeah, I asked myself last year, when I celebrated my birthday, I said, if I were not in this kind of background, what would I do? Actually, I recorded the first children's album in Taiwan back in the 50s. So I think if I were grew up in the US, I probably would like to be a Broadway singer. I think that sounds very interesting. And if I were here in Taiwan without all these expectation from the society of educational success, I think I probably would like to open an art shop or a flower shop because I love flower arrangement. And I really enjoy to go to the art gallery also. That sounds more relaxed or interesting path as well, right?
Yes.
But as for now, I think I'm very, very grateful to be a sociologist all my life. That really helped me to personally to grow and help me to understand my family, my friends, my society, as well as the relative standing of Taiwan in the international podium.
Yeah.
So I think I would encourage all the younger generation to join the army of becoming a sociologist.
Yes. And what a wonderful place to finish our interview. Thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Yi. It's been a fascinating discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Lale.
Thank you. This has been another Journey Through Sociology with Dr. Chin-Chun Yi. Please join us next time when our guest will be Dr. Dilek Cindoglu, joining us from Turkey.